This is a podcast about a college athlete and a guy that definitely would not have talked to her in college. Now they get paid to talk to each other broadcasting basketball games, although they don't get paid to do this podcast yet.
It is the first episode of The Athlete and the Guy That Wouldn't Have Talked to Her in College. Welcome in, everybody. My name is Joel Gadet.
And I'm Megan McEwen.
She is the athlete, and I am the guy that would not have talked to her in college.
It's so sad because I was so nice in college. I don't understand why you would not have approached me. I think this is very sad.
I was shy. That was all. I was very standoffish. My hair looks terrible.
You're very upset about your hair. Is that why you would not have approached any female in college?
Probably part of it. Listen, I'm not one of these people that needs a haircut now. I'm actually at the stage where I'm okay. I kind of want to see what happens if it really grows out. But I'm going between two hairstyles. One is Boy Who Stuck His Finger in the Socket, and the other one is Ace Ventura.
There's no in between.
No, it's a bad situation.
That is a situation, if you do say so yourself. See, what I really am craving right now when it comes to any sort of beauty thing. My hair's fine. It's really long right now, which I don't love necessarily. You can see how long it is. I'm really wanting a pedicure. That is kind of what I just realized. I've had nail polish on my toes for 5 straight years. And this is the first time I don't have any nail. It's just.
You have a sister.
I know, but she's not into it either. Her and I both are desperate for pedicures. It is the Chicago winters are brutal on your whole entire body, your skin, your feet. I'm terrified to wear flip-flops. I did do my eyebrows for this though. They look better than they did yesterday.
Me too.
That's up for us. Thank you.
Let's dive into it. This is a mainly sports podcast is what we're thinking, but we're going to go into everything. Sports, pop culture, lifestyles. We'll do a little bit of it all.
We are multifaceted people. We can talk about more than just basketball.
Yeah, I think I'm hilarious. So
I think you're funny too. And together we find ourselves very funny. We're going to have maybe one viewer of the show, maybe 4. It'll be your parents and my parents.
That only counts as 2 unique viewers because same computer.
You think football is still fun?
Zero fun. So.
Basically, I like outdoor sports, but indoor sports have their place too.
The NFL schedule got released, which took a 3-hour broadcast, which is amazing. I just looked it up online and I knew everything I needed to know. But the NFL schedule gets released. The biggest question, though, is more so, A, will the games happen? And B, will anybody attend them? Megan McEwen, what is your thought on what we will experience as far as sports come the fall?
It's interesting because there's going to be a discrepancy with professional sports and college sports. On a professional level, you can have separate guidelines for when the NFL is going to come back, when the NBA is going to come back, and so on and so forth. However, when it comes to college, whenever commissioners agree that it's time for sports to come back, that's when sports are going to come back. The commissioners have met with the White House and they have said, we are not going to play games until college students are back allowed on campuses. So when will that be is the big question. We don't know. At the moment, you've heard the NBA release certain plans, maybe we'll have everybody play in one city, which sounds great in theory. However, how is that going to work? Some people have said it's going to be like prison because 1, you can't leave a hotel, nor can you let people in. 2, are these players going to be able to see and interact with their families? And number 3, how can you possibly monitor that many people staying out of the coronavirus, reach? And how many tests are you going to have? It's just the logistics of it are kind of crazy when you think of it. But to answer your question very quickly, I just think sports will return with no fans when they do return.
I think you'll see some modicum of fans. I don't know what that looks like yet at this point. The interesting article I read was, as we taped this yesterday, Brett McMurphy from Stadium put out a piece where he spoke to, I think, 7 of the 10 FBS commissioners and a handful of athletic directors as well. And there were thoughts and ideas ranging from potentially playing football at schools where classes are only online and the athletes are potentially the only students on campus. There were a couple of commissioners that brought up the idea of playing football in the fall if that means that not every school is active in the league at that point because of restrictions in different parts of the country. it's crazy to think about. And I think the quote that summed it up the best was Mike DeWine, the governor of Ohio, was asked on Paul Feinbaum about whether or not Ohio State, I think it was Paul Feinbaum, whether or not Ohio State would be playing football in the fall. And his question was basically, I don't know. And anybody who tells you they do at this point is making things up. And ultimately, I think where we're at is that we're all making things up because we just want information and nobody really knows what the fall is going to look like.
And that's the problem. So much of this has been completely unknown. I'm in Chicago right now, so our stay-at-home order was originally until May 1st, and now it's till May 30th. So things and information is changing constantly, which has become an issue. Obviously, we'd love to have sports back. That would be ideal, especially for us, so we could work again. But you also have to keep in mind you have thousands of student athletes that these commissioners and athletic directors are responsible for. And that is a completely different ball game than it is on the professional level with those pro sports.
Let me ask you this question, and we're broadcasters, so it's a little bit different because we go to sporting events all the time, but put your fan hat on. If I were to tell you right now that sports would be back with some social distancing measures, are you going to a game?
I would go to a game, yes. However, that being said, I have no pre-existing conditions. I'm 28 years old. I would, now that comes out of my mouth, I remember that I still want to be able to interact and see my family members and my grandparents who do have pre-existing conditions. So upon second thought, maybe it's something that I'm not doing, or if I'm doing it, I'm going with a mask on.
All right, so we have a third member of our show to bring in at this point, and I want to preface his introduction by a poll from his website. Ben Breiner is a writer that covers the SEC for the state in South Carolina. They had a poll on their website. Would you go to a game in the fall? There were 4 options: full stadium, maximum fans, but safely, few fans, and no fans. So I guess you're not going in that point. 34% of respondents thought there should or would be full stadiums come the fall. So it's interesting to see kind of where the American public's perspective is on all of that right now. 24% said, and this was yesterday, the poll was still live, but 24% max, but with safety measures, 27% few fans, 14% no fans. All right, Ben Breiner joins us now from the state down in South Carolina. He is the South Carolina Gamecocks beat writer and editor of GoGamecocks.com. Ben, quarantine beard on fleek, my man.
It's taken a lot of work, and now it's starting to sort of generate comments on Twitter. So I think it's in a good spot.
It's very Game of Thrones-esque, kind of. What's the guy? He's one of the wildlings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about? There's so many characters in that show, you can't keep track of all of them.
I only know one, the Mountain. That's it.
Yeah, it's not really a main character, but that's fine. You clearly did not watch the show. Anyways, this is irrelevant to our discussion of which is going on right now.
All right, Ben, Ray Tanner, athletic director at South Carolina, you wrote about it this week. He, in an interview, said or was asked about whether or not there could be 30,000 fans in an 80,000 seat football stadium. And his quote in response was, quote, "That number is way high." What's the thought in SEC country about what football could look like this fall?
Well, a lot of it kind of depends on, what kind of social distancing rules are in place, not just in terms of football, but also kind of nationally, what kind of say the NCAA has on policies, the SEC, any of the conferences really, because, if I talked to a couple kind of experts in the ticketing space, and they were sort of saying, they're starting with that 6-foot buffer zone that we've all sort of heard about, and then trying to apply that to a stadium. And then it gets kind of weird because you're talking about, are you sitting with, just you alone? Are you sitting with, your roommate who's also quarantined with you? Or, if you have a family of 6, can you bring them and sit them all? And then you have other sort of weird, I guess, geometric concerns where, are you skipping rows in the stadiums? And, if you're in the upper deck, those rows are going to be closer than they are in the lower deck because of how they're because of the sort of slant of the thing. So it gets very complicated. Based on what Ray Tanner said, I think that's probably the more conservative side of things. The experts I talked to said something like 15 to 35%. But, it's still SEC country, and if they can find a way to play the football games, they're really going to.
How has the fan base taken to the idea that football could potentially get played, however, no fans could attend the games?
I think at this juncture, people will just take whatever football they can get. I mean, I think people would be mad if they can't go to stadiums, and I think people will be really mad if we end up in a situation where, if only 15,000 people can get let in. I mean, South Carolina has already sold 47,000 season tickets. So people are going to be annoyed in how that gets sorted out. But I really think as long as any games are played, even if you have to watch them on TV, even if it's weird because, the area around the stadium is obviously bustling all Saturday, all fall, it'll be very weird if that's not the case. But I think that as long as people get some football, that'll at least make them a bit happy.
What have you heard as far as how that could happen? I know I was reading, like at Clemson, they've talked about different levels of IPTE, their donor base, grants you certain access to certain games.
Yeah, so Tanner actually went on the radio, I think it was yesterday, and basically said they haven't delved into the specifics of all that yet. Again, in talking to some of the experts, there's really all sorts of ideas out there, and I don't think they're fully settled. You could have lottery systems. You could have, as we said, kind of split season ticket packages. I know South Carolina last year, they were sort of experimenting with 3-game packages, wherein you basically, you would get, I think you had to buy a neutral site game, and you got one good home game and one, non-conference game or something like that. So, you could have split situations. The thing that I'm actually maybe even more interested in is what it looks like in terms of students, or, can you have a band, that kind of stuff? Because, realistically, if a school wanted, they could just take their biggest donors and say, you're the ones who get in, that's fine. And, that's how a lot of big schools do deciding who gets new season tickets. So I think that, they're kind of working through figuring out those different angles. And I don't think there's a lot of clarity right now because, obviously we still got 4 months until the season. We've still got a lot of questions that sort of have to be answered.
I didn't even think about socially distancing a band, by the way.
Or cheerleaders, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
The other aspect of this, which I'm interested to find out, it costs money to run a stadium. It costs money for the concessions, for the workers to come in and clean, for people to take tickets, for security. How much of a profit would these universities be turning by opening stadiums if there's only for a couple of fans? Is it going to be losing money, or is it going to actually be breaking even? Are you going to be turning a profit? What's that going to look like?
Well, I think some of that's going to hinge on what kind of level of the sport you're at on the college stage. So, for example, in talking to one of the experts I talked to, he works with a variety of sports, and he said a lot of minor leagues, they're just not going to come back. They might not come back because of that thing, because concessions are so much of their money, and because tickets are. Now, if you're an SEC program, well, you have an ESPN deal. You have, I guess, SEC Network's also under that deal. So for no other reason, I'd imagine to hold on to that, they would, do that.
What is what you see as a best case scenario? What is what you see as a nightmare? And where do you think we ultimately fall in between that?
Well, maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I see a best case scenario as, at the very least, having games probably social distanced, but a part of me thinks that maybe the 15,000 number is on the conservative side. Obviously, the Gamecocks athletic director has said something different, but I just kind of look at sort of how much things have changed across, the past 6 weeks, and just how much I could imagine they can change in the next few months. I mean, 7 weeks ago, we were talking about maybe they can play the NCAA tournament without fans. And obviously, we're a long way from then to now. So I'm actually pretty optimistic if you want to talk the very best case scenario. I think that the very best case scenario is you could have maybe not full normalcy, but something close to it. Honestly, the worst case scenario is you hit a sticking point with student athletes and I guess, South Carolina nursing students coming back to school. You have flare-ups there and you end up just having the fall semester closed as well. I mean, that's in my mind the very worst case scenario.
Then we'll support local journalism here. How do people find GoGamecocks.com and the state? How do they track you down?
Just go to thestate.com, read all of our good stuff. We have lots of, news coverage about coronavirus stuff here, a lot of Gamecocks coverage. GoGamecocks.com will just reroute you to another part of our website. So that's good. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Breiner the State, where I tweet mostly nonsense and occasionally something about football.
Breiner the State makes you sound like a superhero, by the way. So that's well done.
Especially with the beard.
Ironically, I had a former coworker who switched his over from that to The Athletic, and now it just sounds like it's his name, The Athletic, which sounds like he's really complimenting himself. So,
Ben, thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
Meghan, some postscripts on all of that. There's a lot to break down, and we'll do that in the next couple of weeks here. I think the business side of it just what the money means and how important it is to keep athletic departments running will be very interesting to watch, and how much all of this to do costs. But bottom line, what all this I think comes down to, there is a reason they are playing baseball in Korea right now, and we are not. And it comes down to, in that country, they very early on tested, contact traced, and isolated at very extreme levels, and they've clamped it down to the point where, as we're recording this, yesterday there were 12 new cases, the day before that there were 4, and the day before that there were 2.
I think it's also important to note that nobody wants this. Nobody wants to be in quarantine. Nobody wants the economy to be doing what it's doing. Nobody wants this. It's a matter of how do we safely reopen the country so a ton of people don't die? And I understand that there are a lot of different opinions out there. I'm sure we have different opinions. That being said, I just don't see college football realistically opening with any sort of fans this season, especially when it comes to up north. I'm thinking about North Chicago, Northwestern football. Listen, Nebraska's, Iowa's, they have a chance to maybe come back and get students on campus and maybe play with some social distancing. But Chicago, Rutgers, you're right outside of New York. Maryland, you're right outside of DC.
I'm from New Jersey, and Rutgers is not right outside of New York.
You know what I'm saying, though. In those areas of the country that are more affected, conferences that are in the areas of the country that are more affected by this virus. I look at the Pac-12, when you have the Washingtons, with Seattle is one of the hardest hit cities with this. You have all the California schools. I just don't realistically at this point in time see fans being allowed in stadiums in those regions of the country.
Beyond that, I'm hard pressed to believe, how do you enforce? Ben talked about social distancing. If you're a group of 2, you have to sit X far away from a group of 3, and who's to know that the group of 4 that showed up all live together? How do you know? How do you judge who's moving around in the stadium? When are you 6 feet from an aisle or 6 feet from another seat?
What if you go to the bathroom? Is there somebody in the bathroom every time you go in? And what? Who's monitoring if you're washing your hands? I mean, come on. You don't know these things, and there's too many small logistical things that have to happen in order for this to safely reopen.
All right, more of that as we move forward next week. Topic number 2 coming up, though, Meghan, and we have a guest for this one as well.
Joining us now is a very special friend of mine, my former teammate at Northwestern and current communications director at Priority Sports, Miss Maggie Lyon. Thank you for coming on and joining us. And you're here because we're about to break down a very interesting topic that Maggie and I have actually talked about quite often, the name, image, likeness situation that is going down with the NCAA. The NCAA announced earlier last week some recommendations as to what can be implemented moving forward as early as the 2021 season regarding athletes being able to profit off their name, image, or likeness. It's a topic that has been hot since the beginning of time with the NCAA and sports. Maggie, I know that you have a very, very good pulse on what goes on at the college level as well as the professional level. But how do you see this breaking down? First and foremost, you were an athlete at Northwestern. You played from 2012 to 2016.
Very good
Got
friend.
that right. I was 2 years older than her. Back off. But what was your situation like as a student athlete in regard to this realm of possibility?
No, well, first off, thanks so much for having me on. Really appreciate that my expertise is being lended to a legit, publication. But yeah, so I think it's an interesting, point that's being brought up. I would always tell people, when I was in college, something that, as a female athlete playing basketball or playing really any sport, college is like the height of your notoriety. Especially when you see basketball wise, honestly, like a senior at UConn, they hit their notoriety. They go to the WNBA, might be the second overall pick, whatever, in the draft, and people kind of forget about them, which I think is starting to change a little bit just because the WNBA has a lot of momentum and getting a lot more viewership and stuff. But like the time to really strike it hot with who you are as an athlete and your name and likeness, college. So any time that you are able to benefit off of what you have worked your entire life for and to benefit monetarily off that is non-existent. So I think this is awesome in terms of like Olympic sports, female sports, because like when I was in college, I couldn't have the Maggie Lyon basketball camp over the summer. I would have made probably like a couple $1,000. Like I could have done, I don't know, 5 or 6 days at the high school that I went to, got a bunch of girls. I couldn't have advertised it as like the Maggie Lyon camp, like with Maggie Lyon, the Northwestern player, this and that. That's illegal. I think that I've always thought that was crazy. Like this is the time, like when I graduate, say I don't play professionally or I end my career, that's it. Like I go into the business world, and why would I be holding basketball camps? So in terms of that, I think it's awesome.
Here's an issue I foresee with some of this. First and foremost, especially when you mention men's basketball or football, the pettiness that could come from this. For example, you have a player on your team. Maybe if you take the example of a football team, your quarterback is going to have the opportunity to get paid more money because that is a position, you're in the spotlight more often. You have the potential to have jerseys sold. You're talked about more on television. So say you can make more money off of a social media post as opposed to your O-line. We're talking about 18-year-olds here who don't have that high of a maturity level. How are you not going to have jealousy seeping up there? How are you not going to have issues with internally with saying, well, I'm working just as hard as he is, but he's getting paid more money than me. This is BS.
Do you guys think that issue would have caused rifts in your locker room when you guys played together?
100%, I think it would have. I would have been irritated if a freshman got paid money and I did not. That's just from my personal, when I was 22 years old, that would have bothered me.
So I think that it's interesting. So that comes into play now in a collegiate locker room. This comes into play in professional locker rooms as well. Like you have the Lakers locker room, and one person hears about this deal they got with a local car dealership. So someone who isn't repped by that agent goes to their agent and is like, hey, how come this guy, I play more minutes than him, but he got this deal and you didn't get me this deal? Like that stuff happens all the time. And so to bring that down to a lower level, I think we'll start to definitely create just different dynamics. I think you will learn to manage it, but like you said, Megan, 18 to 22-year-olds is a little bit different with, professional locker rooms when those numbers are getting tossed out, when these marketing deals are getting compared. It's, you're at a professional level. This is your business. Like you are mature. You have veterans in the locker room who are 33, have full families and are adults. And then you got 23-year-olds who are just leaving college, but you have people to check them. when the 21-year-old is checking the 18-year-old, there's not as much credibility in the locker room in college, in my opinion. I also think that in this day and age of social media, like Instagram was honestly just kind of getting rolling when we were in college. And I would be really annoyed with someone who was trying to get clout, was trying to get more followers, was trying to like do funny posts or do something to try and like raise their following on social media, when I would look at it, be like, why aren't you focusing on basketball? Why, you made those TikTok videos last night, you should have been in the gym shooting. Like, so that kind of thing where, your focus might be away from the sport. But then there's also people who are famous outside of their sport. And so like, how do you draw the line there is my question. Like, you might be a TikTok star, but the people who are following you on TikTok have no idea you play softball. Like that's where it's kind of where I don't know how the NCAA is going to police that.
Would you have gone to New Trier and run the Maggie Lyon basketball camp?
100%. Yeah. That's like, I mean, I don't want this to sound bad, but like, it's kind of an easy thing to do. Like I can run a basketball camp. Like I've been to hundreds of camps. I like to coach. I have this experience. I have this skill, and I have a community that's followed me and followed my career. And then I go to Northwestern, which is 10 minutes away. Like, and those people are now following me at Northwestern. That would be a no-brainer. And I would have loved it too, because then also it helped Northwestern's brand too. Like you get more people coming to the games, you get more people following the team. I think about it with a fencer, like a fencer who is from, did you fence?
Yeah.
You fenced?
I did.
Oh, there we go.
What?
So one of my good friends at Northwestern, she was a fencer. She's from Long Island, and like the fencing community out east is pretty big, but like to be at a high level collegiate fencing program is a big deal. Obviously there's professional fencers, Olympic fencers, like there's a whole community like that, but to be able to like, use your name and likeness in mere 4 years where you're at the top of your craft, I think that's crazy.
The interesting thing I thought of last night too, when I was thinking of both of you guys, and people talk about the video games returning and what it will take for that to happen. And obviously that takes a group license where you have to get everybody is involved approval. In order to do that, you usually need some sort of union. I was thinking union. I was like, wait a minute, that happened at Northwestern while you guys were in school. So I was kind of curious, thinking about what's happening now. What was it like for you guys when the football team was going through all of that while you were in college?
Well, that happened, and I'll never forget, because Kane Coulter, the quarterback of Northwestern, was the one who spearheaded that. It was a crazy time, and we talked about that a lot during, it was a big topic while we were there. Northwestern, it was a great idea in theory. However, we talked Northwestern was probably the wrong school to have as the spearhead for that, just because the student athletes at Northwestern are treated so well, and they have such a big say in regards to campus life on campus. In regards to, we have a ton of academic help. There's really a point of emphasis placed on mental health. You have access to nutritionists and therapists, which now are standard, I think, pretty much across all conferences. However, at the time, Northwestern, I feel, was kind of ahead of that.
And I think that a lot of it, and I mean, they could disagree with me, the football players, but I felt like it was a union the thing to do in regards to, like, technically speaking, what you should have started. Maybe not, but I think the conversation that started is what they were trying to do. And I think they did that well.
Because the interesting part of that is I think there's now a space for not necessarily all athletes unionizing, but there's got to be some sort of help in all of this from people that know what they're doing. Because like if you start running basketball camps, there's liabilities there. Obviously this is all taxable income. So you've got 18-year-old student athletes that are going to have to learn business and how to set up an LLC and how all of those things work. In West Virginia, I know already came out and said, like, they're going to start doing education on this stuff for their student athletes. And I'll be curious to see what kind of void is, or what fills the void of, here's how you go about doing this the right way.
And this notion of athletes getting, go ahead, Maggie.
I was just going to say, in terms of, I work at a professional sports agency, and we do the marketing for professional athletes. That's part of, we're full service. We do contracts on court, on field, and then we do their marketing off the field, off the court. And just trying to figure out how to navigate that, I think, is going to be interesting, where, you don't necessarily want to take 100 new clients. Like, I mean, think about all the student athletes at Northwestern or at, University of Illinois, and to proactively do the marketing for all of the women's volleyball players, like, that's very difficult. And, they're not going to want to, someone's not going to want to have them, all 15 people on the roster, do something. So how is it fair? And so the question, I think, is like, do you have someone in the athletic department now that is like, do you have a marketing arm, not of like your athletic department, but a marketing arm of your like talent, of your players, that's entering like thousands of people into a marketplace that was no longer existed, where, as opposed to someone who might be starting like the first big YouTuber, that it was like a trickle effect. Slowly but surely, all of a sudden this platform built, you press go on NCAA athletes allowed to do marketing, and it's just the floodgates open, and like, it's going to be, I think, potentially like oversaturated. And I mean, I think at the least these like get free stuff. Like, you're not going to be the top person, obviously, like the Zion Williamsons and the Trevor Lawrences, whatever, like, you're obviously going to get big deals and whatnot. But yeah, no, I think it's going to be interesting, like, how representation then works with these athletes.
Ultimately, I feel like this is going to be a major distraction for these 18 to 22-year-olds, because now you're talking, oh, well, how am I going to make money off of this? And now how am I going to pay attention to the business side of it, as opposed to how am I going to beat Ohio State tomorrow night? I want to also take this time, because this has been such a hot topic for years and years, and it's been sensationalized by the media a little bit. And I think the NLI is going to definitely, when people talk about athletes need to get paid for their image and likeness and their name, you're talking about the Zion Williamsons of the world. You mentioned the Trevor Lawrences of the world, the Sabrina Ionescu's of the world, who have a national presence and a national name. My question is, and I was talking about this with my dad, who's a head women's basketball coach at Northwestern, how much money are you actually making off of their jersey sales? So you have the national name. So of course the Zions of the world, the Sabrinas of the world, more of a national name, you're going to have that. But take a player like Carson Edwards at Purdue. How much money did Purdue actually make selling his jersey in the bookstore? Take a look at somebody like Draymond Green or Steph Curry, who have had these huge NBA careers. How much money did Steph Curry Davidson jerseys make while he was at Davidson? Well,
and before I throw it to you on that one, Maggie, the other interesting thing is, how much are those athletes worth when taken out of that jersey? Because even at the professional level, like, I Googled last night, like, athletes in ads, and there's Shaq in an Icy Hot ad in a red blank jersey, Aaron Rodgers in a Pizza Hut ad in a gray blank hoodie identified as pro quarterback. Nick Saban in the Aflac commercials is in an Aflac polo with Aflac national championship rings. Those people all have brand ID on their own, independent of where they play or coach, and that's why they're valuable, right?
Right. No, that's a great point. And that's where the NCAA, NBA, NFL, all these organizations have like basically laws about anytime we even have one of our NBA guys do a camp, any flyer, like, you cannot have any NBA logo on it. You cannot use NBA logos to advertise yourself. So that's a great point, where like, you take the best women's volleyball player out of the jersey, and do they know who that is, or do they need the uniform to understand who they are? And that's even like,
you have a helmet on, you can't even see who it is.
Right. And that's like, I think where you look at Trevor Lawrence and he has the hair, that's like a very, specific thing that he can, like, that's his brand. Where like Baker Mayfield had the headband, like, that's his brand. Skylar Diggins had the headband. Like, I mean, Skylar Diggins had more than just that, but it's little things like that where with Skylar Diggins, she wore those headbands. Adidas all of a sudden sold out of the headbands, and she got like nothing from that, where she was the marketing tool that was free for Adidas. that, I mean, other than their contract with Notre Dame at the time, but no, I think, no, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, what, and even to the Steph Curry point about his Davidson jersey, he actually can't, because the NCAA still has, I'm pretty sure, rights over that. So like if there's a commercial where Goodyear wants to, you know, put some throwback footage of him playing at Davidson, they can't do that unless they pay like the huge licensing to NCAA. So you see a lot of this old stuff, and like you basically, you could see him with like the back of his jersey, but you cannot show like the NCAA logo or anything unless you're paying like a big chunk to the NCAA.
The G League has now emerged as a legitimate contender for, or let me rephrase that, a legitimate option for young people to get into and forego that one and done rule that currently is within the NCAA college basketball limits. How has the G League, or how will that affect recruiting and how we view the landscape of college basketball?
I think it's interesting. I'll be interested to see how like the money and the contracts work in terms of, I don't know like how many people on a roster can be given the big like $300,000 salary that they're talking about. And I need to look more into like the details of that. But just like the WNBA new collective bargaining agreement says people can make up to a certain amount, but it's like it's kind of like a very small fine print that only like one person makes it. And for that, I would say that what I don't like about it is, okay, yes, you're making money for sure. That's fine. And if you need money right away, like I can't say anything to that. Like your family might need it. You need to make money. This is your chance. I'd say the only thing is like emotionally and mentally being ready to go from high school to being a professional athlete with grown men in your locker room who don't care about your development. They're trying to make it to the league. Every single person in that room is trying to make it to the league. They don't care about you. I don't think team dynamic, you know, the coaches want to be in the NBA, everyone. So it's a hard, you're flying commercial, you're flying connecting flights. You might be getting an NBA call up. You might be practicing with your G League team at 10 a.m. You get out of practice at noon. You got to drive 3 hours to Atlanta to go suit up for the Hawks that night. Like it is unpredictable. It's, and so what I say with that is like, are you emotionally and mentally like mature enough for that? I think college gives you that little handhold. Like you leave home, they hold your hand a little bit, you mature a little bit, you're on your own, you see the bright lights, you kind of handle that, and then, you know, one and done's go to the next step. Whereas you're kind of like at the top of who you are in high school, number one recruit, you go down to the G League to then go up to the NBA. I think if you're a top recruit, you're here, and then you go to college at Kentucky, you're going up, and then you go to the NBA and you're going further up. I think that's my personal opinion about the G League. I think now that this is happening, they might be putting more resources towards developing. It's almost kind of like a minor league thing of baseball. I think that they might want to, they'll put a little bit more time and effort into these guys who could have been going to Kentucky and instead chose the G League. And so now they're saying, okay, you're in our organization. We want to work with you. We want to develop you because this is our time to then, you know, in 2-3 years, you could be our all-star at the NBA level. So like, I think the NBA would change how they do things, but that's how I see it in terms of like emotional and mental maturity is going to be difficult. But if you need the money, like socioeconomically, I can't fault anybody for that. That's what people I think get too hung up on, like people leaving early from college don't know what their situation is. Like they might not be able to survive. Maybe like their family is like getting foreclosed on. Like, I don't know. They might need it.
Would it have changed if this was around for both of you? Would this have changed where maybe you would have gone to college? And I know, like Maggie, you stayed home. Meghan, you played for your dad. So there's circumstances there. But like Maggie, if somebody would have told you that you could go to school at UNI and be on billboards featuring car dealerships that you wouldn't be able to get being in Chicago. And Meghan, same thing. Like if you could go be a star at a mid-major as opposed to, you know, the role you had at a high major, would that have altered the money you could earn, the decision that you guys made?
Good question.
For me personally, no. My decision though is more of a family situation with like my sibling that I had at home, and kind of needed to be close for that. And also I knew that my career aspirations when it comes to basketball and playing were going to end after college. So for me, like, I wanted to do journalism in Northwestern, the best journalism school in the country. So like for me, the future benefits outweighed the current playing benefits and what would be like a profitable situation. But that's just me personally.
And I think, I mean, personally for me, I actually think what my situation was could have made me more money than if I had just gone and played for University of Michigan.
Sure.
Because I was local and people knew me before I went there. And, you know, certain people would come and watch me because they knew who I was. And I'm not trying to say that as like, it was more just like friends of our family. But like there were people who had never watched Northwestern women's basketball before until, you know, I got there and they you know, bought season tickets, whatever. So in that, like, I actually feel like I would have benefited off of that. I see it though, like with these Instagram stars or the, you know, TikTok stars, whatever. Why would you want to go to Oregon State, which has a fun, like fantastic women's basketball program, if you also had an offer from UCLA? So, okay, now you're in LA, you're in this entertainment hub. I would go there because in terms of me post basketball, I've got 500,000 followers on Instagram. Maybe I can go into modeling after, maybe I could get a cameo in a movie. Like, I don't know. So that's where I think this could maybe change it up a little bit, even for like that level of sport, not necessarily football, basketball. Because with football, basketball, or men's basketball, you know, if you go to like a high major program, you're a celebrity there. So you know, money wise, I actually think for men going to UCLA, now that the program isn't as like where it was, you actually in LA, you're kind of forgotten. You know, they've got the Lakers, they've got the Dodgers, they've got everything. And there's like, which is way too much content. Whereas if you go be a star at, you know, North Carolina in Chapel Hill, that's like, you are the guy there. Whereas you're not the guy in LA. LeBron's the guy in LA. So I think for that, it definitely would play a factor. And I think it plays a factor now, really, before the marketing happens.
Such good thoughts. Always great thoughts from Maggie Lyon, the third McEwen daughter.
I try.
All right, quick postscript on Maggie's thoughts and conversation there. Meg, the thing I wanted to hit on was the very last thing we talked about, and that was like how much money you could make influencing potentially where you play. And the thing I thought was interesting, I actually went back because LSU got all this talk around the NFL draft that all their offensive players that were draft eligible were drafted. Like their offense is now in the NFL. So I went back 4 years and I looked at the draft class for LSU and I looked at their 3-star commitments, not their 5 stars, but their 3-star commitments. They had 8 3-stars in the 2016 recruiting class from 247 Sports. 2 of those 8 went on to become difference makers. Only 3 of them spent their entire career at LSU. So I say that from the standpoint of, I'll be curious to see what the impact is of some of those 3-star guys who have offers from mid-majors and Power 5s. If they don't take the Power 5 offer going forward and instead go be the man instead of just a man at a smaller school.
A lot of reasons why those types of players will choose to end up going, and we see this all the time on the women's game. You have a lot of players that could go be stars at some of these mid-majors or even like a Big Ten school, but choose to go to UConn because it's UConn, it's the name, but they stood on the bench for 4 years. So, but it's you went to UConn and you played there. So
that experience is great too.
And it is a great experience. And like some people are just like, that's their dream, that's their goal. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. It's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out over the next couple of years. I can't see how it won't be a distraction on teams. And I don't see how it's not going to cause some major issues.
Rise and shine.
You're dead to me, and you are, because I'm out.
Can we please accept this route?
Absolutely, I will.
All right, this is our first non-sports segment on the athlete and the guy that would not have talked to her in college. And Meghan, this is one that I know have been sitting on for a while. We're diving into the realm of pop culture. You've got some things to get off your chest. Before we do that real quick, I just want to say kudos to Jay Cutler. Because in any marriage, if your wife doesn't understand that a man from Tennessee would find joy in going to Tennessee to be on a farm with his children, I don't know. That's that. Meghan, The Bachelor, what do you got?
I've got beef with The Bachelor. And first and foremost, you have to understand that when The Bachelor first came out, my mom didn't let me watch it when it was on TV. She was like, this is degrading towards women. Like, I'm not going to let you watch this.
That's actually
And
fair.
so I was The Bachelor kind of had a very sour taste in my mouth from that age moving forward. I've got a couple reasons as to why I have beef with The Bachelor. First and foremost, if I see another 22 or 23-year-old saying to the camera that they're ready to find love, I'm sorry, you are 22, 23 years old. What, the frat boys that you hooked up with in college didn't bring you love? No kidding. Get out in the real world, get a job, learn how to file taxes, find a legitimate partner, learn how to date, learn how to have a fight. You're not ready to find love. You're 22 years old. Do not throw that crap at me. Secondly, my favorite thing they say on The Bachelor, and mind you, I've tried to watch it before. I've tried to be like, oh, I can like be with the girls and like be a girly girl and like grab a glass of wine and like, Bachelor Mondays. I can't do it because when they say, well, they're not here for the right reasons. You thought that they came on here just because you're so freaking special and they wanted to date you? 25 men or 25 women are going to want to date you? That's the only reason why they're here? No, they're here to get famous and be on TV, to promote their brand, and I guarantee you, more than half of them are there to get back at an ex. And finally, all of those women they have, for the most part, are pageant queens. And if I have to see another 105 woman going across the screen as if that is what normal acceptable beauty standards are, I'm going to scream. Therefore, I have beef with The Bachelor. I don't see how women can watch it and be like, oh, he's the man of my dreams. He's dating 25 other women. If you want to find that, get on Hinge. Come on. Like, this is ridiculous that this show has garnered as much respect and attention as it does. I cannot believe we have made celebrities out of these people. Come on. Like, what Brown done? I have not even watched the show. I know who Alabama Hannah is. What has she done besides dance and date Tyler Cameron? What has she done? I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't get it. It's beyond my comprehension. I will never watch the show fully. Like, it's just not for me. I got beef with it. Unpopular take. That's a hot take, though.
On that note, by the way, Jay Cutler's now ex-wife or soon-to-be ex-wife, Laguna Beach. Not all that different from The Bachelor. It's just not solely based on dating. It just happens to be people that date, I think. I've never seen it. Also, don't do Hinge like that. Tinder is the one you want to throw under the bus.
Sorry. I guess it's a classier app, as we will discuss in this episode. You're right. Tinder is probably the correct app to throw under the bus in that manner.
So 2 things to add on to your thoughts there also. I actually know somebody who was a contestant on The Bachelor, or on The Bachelorette. He was one of a group. So maybe in a future episode, I don't know what like NDAs they have to sign, but that could be an interesting road to go down here. Second of all, I think I've told you this. I did go to an open casting call to be on The Bachelor once.
Oh my God. Details now.
So I was living in Florida at the time. I was living in Bradenton, and they had an open casting call in Orlando, like outside Disney. So I went because I was like, this will be hilarious. Like clearly I'm not going to get picked. I weigh at that point in my life like 130 pounds. I don't weigh that much more than that now. You're
probably too heavy because the girls aren't allowed to weigh 130 pounds on that show.
Yeah, I was way over. But like I remember I showed up wearing khaki like shorts and like a pink Abercrombie polo. There's zero chance that I was going to wind up on this show.
Were you wearing a puka shell necklace too?
No. But I think I probably had a popped collar. This was in like 2010.
Pop cultures were big then, yes.
It was huge. So I showed up. I was the only guy there. There were like throngs of women. One of them showed up in a wedding dress, and you have to like go and you take a picture against the wall, and you have like a name placard, and you sit down, and it's everything you think it is. Like it's a little video camera that like you take on a family vacation in 1997, like fits on your hand, with a tape. And they pop the tape in, you say your name, like you hold the placard, and they ask you a bunch of questions about like your life, what you do, what you're interested in, like who you're interested in, what your dating life is like, and then that's the end of it, and you leave. But it was incredible. And it was all of these people trying to figure, like, they were all fighting with each other. It's like, I'm going to whine. Clearly, no, you're not. I'm going to whine. Like, I distinctly remember there were 3 women there who were like, sold that they were going to be the next Bachelorette, and it was amazing.
Did any of them make it?
I've never seen an episode, so I've watched a lot of Bret Michaels' Rock of Love though. So
TMI, too much information. It's just easier to say TMI. I used to say don't go there, but that's lame.
All right, final segment this week here on the pod. Meghan McEwen. This is a segment we're calling TMI, where every week we give a little bit TMI. You mentioned Hinge in the last segment. You have my profile, right?
Do I have your profile? What's great about Hinge is like it tries to give you some personality questions.
Yes.
So Joel, first off, his has a picture of himself. The guns are out. He's looking buff. And the caption is, he's clearly on a hike, by the way. There's ocean in the background. He's on a cliff, and it says, "My submission to National Geographic." Very normal. So far, things are normal. But then they ask you some personality questions. This one, "My most controversial opinion is," and Joel wrote, "pineapple on pizza is good." To which I personally would click X. But that's just me. I'm not trying to date Joel. And then Joel did very smart that a lot of guys do when you see on these dating apps. Joel has a picture with a dog, and it's very cute. My dog looks at me like this is the caption. And then it says, "The highlight of my day is usually," and it's the emoji of a man strength training, which Joel is a CrossFit guy. He actually competed in the CrossFit Games in 2018, which I just learned earlier today.
I broadcast them.
Oh, I thought you competed in them.
No, but thank you for that.
Okay, qualities I'm looking for in a +1 wedding date. Willing to dance like nobody is watching.
Yeah. Have you seen me? If anybody's watching, it's a disaster.
What song is it that will pull you out to the dance floor in which you hope your +1 dances like no one is watching?
Cha-cha slide. My mother will tell you, when I had my wisdom teeth taken out and I was still under the anesthesia, but I was awake, I did the cha-cha slide on the way out of the doctor's office.
Okay, that's actually kind of incredible. That's awesome. No, this is a good Hinge profile. I mean, like, it's solid. You don't look like a serial killer. I mean, if I were, if I were Jewish, and because that's the only criteria you have.
Really, it's the overarching.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think this is a really solid profile, and I think that I would assume you would get quite a few checks.
Clearly a 10 out of 10.
On your Hinge profile? Yeah, I would give it. I will say, I feel like it doesn't fully, let people know you have this fantastic personality.
Okay.
I think we need to work on our personality questions a little bit.
All right. Well, I
give it an 8 out of 10.
That's fair. I'll take that.
You go to the Hall of Fame if you shoot 8 out of 10.
That's true. That is factual. All right. That'll wrap it up for our first episode, Meghan McEwen. We covered some ground today.
I know.
Hopefully you're still watching.
Good topics. Maybe more than our parents will watch. We'll find out.
It's true. Well, if they watch and we have a reason, we'll be back here next week. For Meghan, who's the athlete, I'm Joel, the guy that probably would not have talked to her in college. We'll see you next week.